Percival Everett won the Pulitzer Prize for James this year, giving me a perfect excuse to talk about one of my favorite authors again. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to another one of those videos which I call Where Not to Start With. This is Where Not to Start with the works of Percival Everett. I just finished my 10th Percival Everett novel, and when I started doing these videos about where not to start with various authors, I either had to have read all of their works or the vast majority of their works or somewhere around 10 of their books. So you'll find that to be true with my Where Not to Start with Hemingway and Faulkner and Toni Morrison and I believe Gabriel Garcia Marquez and others. So I finished the 10th book by Everett, and I felt like, now is the time that I wanted to make this video. And as I've said before, but probably more true this time than any of the other times, all the books I'm going to mention are good books. I don't think I've read a bad book by Percival Everett. I've read some which work for me much better than others, and some which I think will be a difficult entry point to begin reading Percival Everett's work. So those are the three books I'm going to mention here is Where Not to Start. And again, I'm not saying that these are bad books. I'm saying these might be a difficult entry place to start. And two of them have something in common. And the third I just don't think is Percival Everett's best book. So the first book I would tell you not to start with, or a book where I'd say this is not where to start reading Percival Everett, is a book titled Percival Everett by Virgil Russell. As my good friend Mark Nash pointed out in his review of this book, this is, Everett being a postmodernist, and he is essentially writing a story about, at least in theory, his father, and a story his father's telling him that's about him, or his father writing the story about Percival Everett. And then, so you have Percival Everett potentially as a character, his father, what's the reality here, who's telling the story, where does the meaning come from, how much of this is accurate and true. And it's entertaining, as all Percival Everett novels is, but I don't know that this would be the place where I'd start reading Percival Everett, in part because I think if this is where you started, you would miss the humor, the really wry humor, I think, of Everett, because you'd be so bogged down in trying to work out, kind of all the postmodernist touches and references and allusions that he makes. But I did really enjoy that book. The second book, I would say, is a place not to start, is Glyph. Glyph is the book I just finished reading, and I found it to be really entertaining. It essentially is the story of the book. Is that a baby is born who is incredibly intelligent and whose kind of milieu is language. So we're talking about an infant who, over the course of the story actually learns how to walk. That's how young he is. But he reads, he absorbs information, he has eidetic photographic memory, and he's so smart that when he essentially reveals his intelligence to his parents, they kind of freak out. They take him to some doctors, and a whole kind of like hijinks begin to take place, which show this child representing in the lives of the adults that he ends up with different things, and there are all kinds of philosophical questions, and philosophical asides, and lots of discussions or conversations between philosophers and writers. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of that went right over my head. It didn't keep me from enjoying the book, and I kind of wondered if Everett wasn't himself, kind of teasing us with trying to make us believe we had to understand all the stuff in the book to understand or enjoy the book. But not the place I would start, because I do think it would kind of color your view of the rest of Percival Everett's books. And the third book I would choose as a place not to start is Dr. No. Dr. No is one of Everett's more recent books. It came out right after his excellent book, The Trees, and essentially it's kind of a James Bond spoof, where kind of mathematicians and scientists and people like that are involved with, international criminals. It is pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. But again, I think it's kind of a little bit postmodernist, and I'm not sure that is the best place to start. I think you will miss a lot of the intended humor of Everett's work if you started with Dr. No. So those are the three books where I would not start. Those, I would definitely read those. If you're going to read Percival Everett, I would definitely read those three books. But that is not necessarily where I'd start. Where I would start are probably with what I think at this point in my reading are, Percival Everett's three greatest books. The first of those is Erasure. Erasure is a book about a black writer who is, the writer of, highbrow literary fiction who is struggling to get another book contract, struggling to get another book published, struggling with sales, struggling with issues with his family, who essentially decides that he's going to write a book that he considers to be exploitative about the Black experience in the United States of America. And that book is going to kind of make him in terms of money and reputation, even though he writes under a pseudonym. If you've seen the movie American Fiction, you've seen an adaptation of this book. And what I would say is the movie is excellent, the book is excellent, and you can read the book and watch the movie, and you get kind of two different things from them. So I definitely encourage you to read Erasure. The second book, place where I would definitely start with Percival Everett is where I started, and that's with The Trees. This is essentially Percival Everett looking at the issue of racial violence, focusing on the small community of Money, Mississippi, the place where Emmett Till was killed. And we have two black police agents who are members of the Mississippi Board of Investigations or Investigation Board, something like that, who go to Money to investigate the murder of a white man whose brutally murdered body was found alongside the body of what appeared to be a young black man. And then that body disappears and more murders take place, and it's kind of brilliant in its satire, hard-hitting in the ideas that it's trying to get across to you, and I just thought it was great. I think it's a great book. And then the last one is most obviously James. James is my book of the year last year, my favorite fiction read. It won the Pulitzer Prize, it won the National Book Award, and it is, people will tell you it is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, but it really isn't. It is the story of James, who in Huckleberry Finn is known as Jim, or as he used to be, N-word Jim, who's an enslaved person who's trying to escape, who accompanies Huckleberry Finn on his adventures. And while we do see Jim and Huckleberry Finn on some of the adventures that you see in the book Huckleberry Finn, what most of the book focuses on are the thoughts, the ideas, the education, the reading, the experiences of Jim, when he's not with Huckleberry Finn. If you've read Huckleberry Finn, you know there's a large portion of the book where Huck is without Jim. They kind of come back together at the end. And it ends with an incredibly, affirmative statement on the part of Jim, that he is James. He's not a runaway slave named Jim. And it's just an incredibly powerful book with a lot of powerful, searing images. There are, moments of humor. There are moments of tragedy. And I just think it is a brilliant book. And so I kind of myself don't like the idea of referring to it as a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, because to me, it is the telling of the story of James, who happened to accompany Huckleberry Finn and be in a relationship or friendship with him during the book. But anyway, just a great book, and any of those three I think would be a great place to start. And once you've read 2 or 3 of those, if you want to take on the other books, I think those books are really, really good too. Anyway, there you go. There's my opinion about where not to start with the works of Percival Everett. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.